يا من إلى رحمته المفر ومن إليه يلجأ المضطر ويا قريب العفو يا مولاه.
جنازي ما تكسر.
Il m'appartient maintenant de officiellement ouvrir cette session.
Today, our task here as members of the Russell Tribunal on Palestine is very simple, very clear, very uncontroversial. We are here to say what violations of international law is being committed, of which the Palestinian people has been suffering for the last 60 years. We are here to say that any country member of the United Nations, and that is the case of France, of South Africa, and of Israel, has a commitment to that charter, which is to implement the texts that have been submitted and adopted by the international organization.
Plus de 80 experts et témoins ont travaillé pendant ces 4 sessions à Barcelone, à Londres, à Cape Town, à New York, et ils ont été accompagnés, eux aussi, alors d'une équipe extraordinaire de juristes de droit international.
The forces at work in Palestine, much the same as the forces at work elsewhere, are recognizing the chips are down and that there is action being taken, and there is an interesting correlation and connection, Tony mentioned it, a connection between these various movements and the Palestinians, because they all recognize that what the Palestinians have had to put up with for 60 years, sometimes much longer than they have, is their struggle.
You know that from my roof in Bil'in, which is 15 kilometers from the Mediterranean Sea, I can see the sea. I can see it. It's totally clear to see it, but I didn't be there, and I'm not managing to be there and to be in this sea.
Today, as we speak, there's Palestinian workers stopped at checkpoints that can't get through, being held up by 18-year-old soldiers. There are farmers watching their land but unable to get to them. There are Palestinian tour drivers showing tourists parts of Palestine that they cannot get to and having to smile while doing it to make a living. The ethnic cleansing of Palestine in 1947 and 48 that led to the flight of over 3/4 of the Palestinian population is the starting point of any explanation of the evolution of Palestinian labor conditions. Palestinian workers today are spread across many geographical regions. Refugees like myself denied our right to return to our homes. Those living in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, in scattered population centers, divided from one another by Israeli settlements, military checkpoints, and Israeli-only highways. And finally, there are Palestinian workers who are citizens of the State of Israel. Each of these groups of Palestinian workers face harsh conditions to various degrees, but their conditions stem from the multi-tiered system of colonialism, occupation, and apartheid imposed on them by the Israeli state.
C'est l'histoire d'un grand-père qui parle avec son petit-fils, et son petit-fils qui lui dit « Mais je n'arrive pas à déterrer ce pieu-là ». Et le grand-père lui dit « Tu sais, si tu veux y arriver, que tu tires d'un coup, tu n'y arriveras jamais. Si par contre tu le bouges un peu dans tous les sens, comme ça, devant, derrière, à droite, à gauche, un jour tu le sortiras, ce pieu. » Estak, Louis Stack. La visise te'n parlava de pomaggi al portar mentre el sole sperava el carros veien passar siset que no veus l'estaca on estem tots lligats si no ens podrem desfer-se mai no podrem caminar.
We use the word apartheid in Israel officially. In other words, the word we use, the name of our policy towards the Palestinians is called Hafrada in Hebrew. F-H-A-F-R-A-D-A. Hafrada in Hebrew means apartheid, a separateness, to separate. We simply say it in Hebrew rather than Afrikaans. But it's the same concept. And in fact, the official name of the wall is not the security barrier, because it really wasn't built for security, but the official name of the wall is the separation barrier. So and Israel calls the line of the wall, I was going to show it on a slide, but we don't have it, but Israel calls the tortuous line of the wall that intrudes deeply into Palestinian territory its demographic border. Its security border is the Jordan River, but the demographic border is, and this is all in documents, in government statements. This isn't something secret that I'm revealing today. It's up front and it's explicit. And I think that it conforms to what Leah was saying.
When you go to the Holy Land, for us, not having been drilled by anybody, for us, for me, it has been such an uncanny, an agonizing thing to see a replay of what used to happen here.
In many respects, the apartheid regime was much more honest, because the laws of apartheid were openly legislated in Parliament and they were clear for all to see. Whereas the laws governing Palestinians in the Palestinian territory are largely contained in obscure military decrees or inherited emergency regulations, which are virtually inaccessible.
I recognize that law is derived from power. I recognize that the way that laws are made is not some organic laws, but that there is the push and power that creates laws. But that said, I think that we generally know what is just and what is unjust. And what the United States has attempted to do in Palestine is to make what is unjust seem just, what is illegal seem legal.
The Palestinian people constitute one of the largest and longest-standing unresolved situations of displacement in the world. About half the refugees in the world are Palestinian. Approximately 66%, or 7.4 million, of the entire population of 11.2 million Palestinians is forcibly displaced. Among those displaced are at least 6.8 million Palestinian refugees and another 519,000 internally displaced persons.
Before the Arab world decided to use force in order to reject the partition planned by the United Nations, namely before the 15th of May 1948, and before it was clear what are the positions of the sides because the United Nations deliberation on Palestine continued, before these deliberations ended, already half of the Palestinians became refugees.
I know perfectly well that sociocide is not an object of positive international law. I can sense one reason why. This is what Western colonialism is about. It was also about killing. It was also about destroying nature. But it was above all tearing apart, fragmenting, marginalizing local indigenous societies.
In an official discourse, in the Israeli official discourse starting from 2007, the head of the Israeli intelligence, Yuval Diskin, has described the Palestinian side Israel, of course, those who don't accept the rules of the game, as a strategic threat.
Our job as civil society is to pick up the slack when the United Nations fails to do the job it is mandated to do because the United States government refuses to allow it to do what it is mandated to do. That's our job. That's the job of civil society. That was the reason that the largest of the United States mobilizations on February 15th, 2003, and there were 250 some odd demonstrations across this country, but by far the largest was at the foot of the United Nations. Because we were saying to the United Nations the same thing that people around the world were saying. The world says no to war. Well, now the world is saying no to Israeli occupation and apartheid.
Your resolutions trace the history of Israeli violations. You regret, you deplore, you even condemn the violations. But when have your resolutions been implemented? It is not enough to deplore, condemn. What we need is for the United Nations, for you, Excellencies, your governments and the General Assembly in which you serve, to take seriously your responsibility to protect Palestinians living under occupation and facing the daily violation of their inalienable rights of self-determination and equality. The will of we, the people of these United Nations, is that all our brothers and sisters should be free to live in self-determination, that the oppressed should be released from their burden by being given recourse to the law.
And I want to begin by emphatically asserting that the important work of the Russell Tribunal on Palestine is not over. And so now is the time to issue the strongest possible condemnation of Israel. We demand that the state of Israel immediately dismantle its system of apartheid, not only in the occupied territories, but also in relation to Palestinian refugees and inside Israel itself. We demand in the strongest possible terms that Israel rescind all discriminatory laws and practices, and that it immediately halt its persecution of Palestinians wherever they may reside.